So y'all are gonna hate the audio on this one. Sorry about that. I have to do laundry today, and I want to record this and put this up as soon as I possibly can, because this is important. So I'm actually going to be skipping days here. I was not originally planning on doing this, but something went down very, very recently that is extremely important, in my opinion. And so I wanted to discuss it. So, as of today, it's July 27th when I'm recording this. And I woke up to news about a white protester at a Black Lives Matter march getting shot, despite the fact that he was carrying a rifle. Didn't point it out at anyone or anything like that, but he was carrying a rifle. Which is legal in the state of Texas. It's something that several of the protesters who were protesting, staying at home and maybe not infecting other people, yeah, that was something that several of them did. But he got shot. And in my opinion, he got shot because he was at a Black Lives Matter protest, and because he was carrying a gun. At that Black Lives Matter protest, he got singled out. So, I'm going to link in the description the exact article that I referenced for this particular post. And this is what I had to say on my personal account. This is infuriating. The one time a responsible gun owner is interviewed at a protest like this, and some asshole who thinks right of way doesn't apply to protesters kills him the same night. The fact that the shooter whose driver, this article makes me think it was the passenger that shot, so that's why I phrased it that way. So the fact that the shooter whose driver, by reports, sped up into the crowd, crossing the intersection instead of waiting, and had the fucking nerve to try to do a stand your ground claim with 911 based on seeing a gun. Yeah, that's all gross. The police officer who criticized the man as wanting a confrontation because he used curses while talking about why he felt the need to be armed is gross. Hopefully the fact that there was literally a crowd of witnesses will lead to justice for Garrett Foster. I know others might be low-key annoyed if that happens, because let's be real, privilege will have played a factor in it if we get him the justice that he deserves. But he was standing with us. He's one of our own, in our opinion. And in some people's eyes, that may very well lessen or even remove his privilege. Either way, justice for him will set a new precedent regarding people of color protests and people being held accountable for violence against protesters in people of color facing movements. I just wish it wasn't necessary. He shouldn't have been shot. He shouldn't be dead. And my heart goes out to his fiancée, family, and friends. This is something that us Black people and other people of color, whether it be Native Americans fighting for the right to keep their sacred lands, or Latino and Latina people trying to get the rights that they deserve as people who immigrated illegally to this country. Or the ones that I know of the most are the ones for brown people, basically. But either way, my point here is people of color have long had to deal with this fear of being run over by cars by people who decide that since their way of protesting or their reason for protesting annoys them, they shouldn't be protesting. And if they shouldn't be protesting, they don't deserve to have right of way that large crowds normally would. This happened in Austin, Texas. Do you have any idea how many conventions go on, and conventions and festivals really go on in Austin, Texas? There's no excuse for this. South by Southwest is huge in the area where this happened at. This happened right around the area of the convention hall. I've been to RTX, Rooster Teeth's animation and gaming convention. I've been to RTX. I know for a fact that during the RTX weekends, cars, yeah, they would get a little bit annoyed. You could tell by the way that they were inching forward, but cars would still stop like a normal person when large crowds of people would cross streets. There's no excuse for this. With how many people? I haven't reached this particular recording yet, but I had gone over police reports regarding essentially shooting deaths made by cops, so cops shooting civilians or perpetrators, however you want to phrase it. I had went over a national database information about that at one point. And the number of times that a car was listed as a deadly weapon to excuse the police officer's shooting is kind of annoying, honestly. Because it makes it very easy for police officers to claim that, even if the person is driving away. We've seen that with other people of color, with other black people. We've seen them do that. So the fact that this dude has the nerve to say that he shot at Garrett because he was standing his ground, because he thought he saw him pointing his rifle at him, which, by the way, every single witness there states that he had his rifle pointed at the ground. Yeah, that's all, like... So yeah, the fact that he has the nerve to try to twist it around and say that he saw the gun pointed at him, when in reality he singled Garrett out because he was probably one of the few people who were armed, who was armed specifically to protect the people around him, because he knew he has privilege, and he knew that he could theoretically get away with arming himself in a way that other people around him wouldn't. And yet he still got singled out. He still got singled out because of where he was and who he was with. The nerve of that shooter to try to claim that he was scared for his life when his friend or family member, whoever it was that was driving, just tried to run over a crowd of people out of impatience. It's aggravating. It's an insult. It's a joke. It's just infuriating. We shouldn't have to stand for it. No one should have to stand for it. I just really hope that my point about the fact that Garrett Hall is one of us really just hits home for people. Last week I had an interaction with someone who didn't appreciate the way that Creepshow Art shows her support for the Black Lives Matter movement, who felt that talking about Jeffree Star's racism and things like that, the way that she talks about Jeffree Star's racism and the examples that she gave, one of the examples that she gave anyway, that it was inappropriate and that she had no right to really talk when she hadn't really talked much about previous deaths of black people. That was her stance. My argument for her at the time, and the one that I still stand by, is that you should not hold black people to the standard that they always have to comment. They have to comment on the deaths of black people. They have to comment on the current movements going on right now. You should not hold them accountable for that. And if you shouldn't expect to be holding black people accountable for always fighting, you shouldn't hold white people accountable for that either. And what I mean by that is, I'm not talking like you should just forgive if a black person is showing self-racism, self-hatred. You should just forgive if a non-black person or a white person is being racist. That's not what I was meaning by that. What I was meaning by that is that you should not hold your idea of what activism is to every person out there. Because activism can look different to other people. Support can look different to other people. Take me, for example, I'm gabbing on my Facebook posts and probably driving my friends and family crazy at this point with how much I have to comment on shit. But that's the way that I do activism right now. That and these videos. In my case, a lot of it has to do with the physical limitations that I have right now. But that's the way... Sorry, my voice broke. But that's the way I'm going at it right now. I'm going at it from talking about little and big and small stuff. And claiming that someone is not a true supporter just because they didn't cover a certain subject that you yourself have been fighting for forever. That's not fair. So, for those of you who do have that mindset, who disagree with me on that, and believe that a true white supporter needs to be marching with us, needs to be showing solidarity and support with us visibly and constantly, you need to be fighting for justice for Garrett Forest. Because the reality of it is, racists will see and hear about the white man who walked in the Black Lives Matter protest, and they will take away his white privilege card. They will say, because he was with them, he's no longer one of us. That's the reality. He's in Texas. That's a very, very real possibility. So we need to be prepared to shout and scream and fight for him. We may not have to fight as hard as we're having to fight for Breonna Taylor. We may not need to scream as loud as we have for George Floyd. It may be something that we only need to really focus on for a much shorter amount of time. And yeah, it's a little annoying, honestly, that we don't have to fight as hard for Garrett Forest, that we may not have to fight as hard for Garrett Forest as our Black brothers and sisters. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight. That doesn't mean that we should stay quiet. He deserves justice. Just as much as George Floyd and just as much as Breonna Taylor, he deserves justice. So, for those of you who are out on the streets, who are going to rallies, who are going to events for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and every other Black life that we lost this year and in years past, go at it for Garrett Taylor too. He was fighting for us when he got gunned down. It's our turn to have his back. You guys have a good day, and don't be a jerk.